Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Guide to Digital. In episode 6 we're going to be talking about functions, and functions, as per Lego, is where we start pulling all of the blocks together. Functions are a way to do things in a non-linear way in code. So normally if you start to run a program, it'll start at the top and it'll run all the way down to the bottom. A function is a way to create a small set of rules or set of instructions that you can execute again and again and again. So this can remove duplication. So rather than typing, the same thing in 2 or 3 different places, you can create a function. You can put the instructions for that function inside it, and then you just call the function from a couple of different places. We've already used functions actually, and we'll look at how they look and how they work. This really is this is the last piece that we're going to be looking at before we actually build our project. So you've got all the blocks, you've got all the concepts right now. We're just going to start putting them together. So let's have a look at what a function actually looks like. If you have a look here, then the function that we've used is a pretty simple one. It's print. So print, add something here, is exactly that. It is a function called print that you will execute to print something. So here we can go and change this. So we'll print hello function. We'll hit Shift Enter, and then when we execute that cell and the code executes, it prints hello function. So that's a very simple example and a function that does a very simple thing, at least on the surface. But you can create your own functions very easily. The trick to functions is you define them first. In Python, you define a function by typing in def. You leave a space, you type the name of the function, and then you put in round brackets, just like we did in print. So here's an example, def bark. We have the round brackets, we have a colon that defines effectively then what comes after. We have the same white space that we saw in for loops and conditionals. And then we have what happens when you execute the function. So in this function, we're not asking for any specific information. We're just going to print woof when it happens. So first we'll execute that cell, which doesn't do anything. That's basically just creating the function, putting it in the Python kernel's memory so we can access that. And then the next time when we call our function, and you'll see bark looks just like print up above, except there's nothing inside the brackets. So we're going to execute the bark function, which prints woof. You can also create more complicated functions that take in information or input from the user or data from another part of the program, and then do something with that data. And that's what the function print does. So here's another example. We're creating a new function here called say hello. We define it by typing in def space say hello, and then here we're adding in a variable. Okay, the trick is we're not adding in a specific variable. The user is going to define this variable, or the programmer will define this variable when they call the function. So I'll show you how that works in just a second. So def say hello, where we're taking a variable called name, and when the function is executed, it's going to print hello and then name. So again, name is the variable that's passed into it. So first we're going to run this cell, which again puts the function into memory. And now we're going to type in say hello, and we're going to pass it the variable supervisor. So supervisor is a variable we created in episode 2, and this will say hello first last because I didn't change the name in this last run of the program. But if I go up here and I'm going to hit Alt and space, which is going to create a new cell, and I'm going to say supervisor equals Chris. Oop, sorry, needed to type equal, not dash, and then I execute the code again, and supervisor is now the variable Chris. So say hello says hello Chris. The brackets here are a very cool thing. Basically, this is a bit like a basket or a bucket. When you're using a function, you can put a number of different variables or pieces of data or numbers or strings inside that bucket, and the function will use those to complete its task. The trick is you need to define and you need to know what you're putting into the bucket to give it the information and the data it needs to work. So first of all, so let's actually try this. So we're going to create a new variable here, and it's going to be person. And person is going to be Tony. So we'll create that, and we're going to create a new function that accepts two variables, two pieces of input. So the function is going to be introduce, and it's going to accept person 1 and person 2. And in here we're going to print person 1 meet, separated by commas, person 2. And then we're going to introduce, and we're going to introduce supervisor. And I hit tab there. The Jupyter notebooks have an autocomplete, and person. Oh, and we're going to spell introduce right. Introduce. And then we get the output Chris meet Tony. So that's a very simple example of how you can have a function that takes two different variables, in this case combines them in a print statement and outputs that. But you could do many other more complicated things with functions. You could have two numbers come in, you can do different things with the numbers, you could have a list that comes in, you could change the order of the list, or as you will see in the next episode, we're going to use functions to actually complete our leave system. And we're going to do that building with loops, conditionals, variables, and data structures. So we're going to pull everything together, we're going to build our leave system, and then we'll kind of get on to the next stuff. So thank you very much for joining me. Please come back for episode 7, the final episode of the Guide to Digital, where we will again pull it all together and show you what you can do. Thanks so much and take care.